the audio until we get. Okay, if we can all come to order in the next 30 seconds or so, we'll get going. Frank, hello. That's very good, less than 30 seconds, gosh. Okay, well, can everyone hear me? Great. Welcome, I'm Jonathan Porteous. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of WellSpace Health. And this is a really august group to bring here to our wellness campus. I'm afraid I can't introduce everyone. I do want to extend my immense gratitude to my colleagues, my team, and my colleagues at WellSpace Health, many of whom are here. We also have a couple of our board members. Bishop Baker is here, and Larry Moss, Ruzwa Cooper. And this campus has taken a couple of years to unwind. We've begged, we've borrowed, we've not stolen. And it's taken a lot of vision and commitment because, as many of you know, it was bound up with a lot of stuff for a couple of decades. But the vision here is a transformative wellness campus. We, as you probably know, WellSpace Health is a large sort of community-based behavioral health and health system with about 140,000 patients coming to us every year. And what we felt was we needed a campus where we could do an integrated practice with a lot of our behavioral health and health tied in together. We have a crisis receiving site downtown. The next one's going to be in this building behind me here, downstairs. So this is going to be a 24-hour drop-off for people who are acutely psychotic, acutely intoxicated, and alternative in a time when we often feel like we don't have any. Upstairs will be a 24-hour crisis communications hub as the 988 provider for 26 counties in the state, and then the backup for the other 32. We need a big sort of world-class crisis communications center. Not only will we receive all the 988 calls, but we'll be involved with dispatch. And obviously a crisis receiving site downstairs allows a lot of that to happen right here on a campus. Dental practice, the 8 acres right there to our south are also ready to be developed into residential rehab and also a large community health center. So I could go on and on about this amazing organization that I'm very, very privileged to lead. But I do want to talk about my friend Daryl, since this is actually his party.
Keep it long.
Okay. Daryl is spelled D-A. I've known Daryl since I think 2002 or so. So, and I've obviously been kind of bobbing along in his wake for a long time, which I'm very fortunate to do. Obviously, the services we provide have been massively transformed and infused by the Mental Health Services Act, which he and Rusty wrote back in 2004. And that was really a defining moment for the state in terms of mental health and behavioral health services. Probably the next big thing is the recent re-engineering of that very Mental Health Services Act into a Behavioral Health Services Act, building upon the power of the foundation that Daryl laid down. So if there is an advocate for mental health conditions and people with behavioral health conditions, a greater champion than Daryl, do let me know who that is. His Steinberg Institute has also been really, really helpful legislatively. The Steinberg Institute sponsored the 988 bill that has allowed the state to take on the mantle of the crisis continuum that you will be seeing rolling out from the state. But that means the transformation of the lifeline, the national lifeline, the suicide prevention line, which, as you all know, was 1-800-273-8255, changed to 988. And its implementation has really been infused by AB 988, which the Steinberg Institute co-wrote. So the other piece really links to this site. The mayor has been an active partner along with the county and along with the whole community and the whole region in helping us develop this site and come into this site. It is definitely, we were long on vision there a couple of years ago, and then it started happening, and people started seeing their place in this campus with us, and it will be a community wellness environment. And so it's a great privilege to have you all here and have the mayor kick off this piece of the state of the city. This will obviously be a recovery-oriented environment for persons who are unsheltered. We have the honor of serving the majority of those people with healthcare, even though it makes up now a small fraction of the people we serve. These are our people. And to be able to bring them into a campus with multiple services is just going to be really incredible. And again, thanks to the mayor, thanks to the county, and thanks to all of you and my colleagues for making this happen. So without further ado, I am going to introduce Mayor Darrell Steinberg.
Jonathan, thank you. Thank you so much for that very kind introduction, but much more importantly, thank you for the vision that you and your team have brought to Sacramento. So many people, the public, largely thinks, and maybe sometimes for good reason, that this problem is hopeless. And yet you demonstrate every day that if we collectively do the right thing, that homelessness does not have to be hopelessness. And that is the theme of today's second State of the City address that I am privileged to give. I want to begin with some big thank yous to you, obviously, as I said, and I have a long list here, but you know, people, public officials and community leaders are very busy. And I don't take for granted for 1 minute that you took the time to be here. Senator Angelique Ashby, my former colleague who's doing great work in the state Senate. Assemblymember Kevin McCarty, who's championing so many important causes at the legislature and in Sacramento. My city council colleagues, Councilmember Katie Maple, District 5, off to a great start. Same with Councilmember Lisa Kaplan, District 1, representing the Natomas area. I see, who am I missing? Karina is right in front of me there. I was getting there. My friend, Councilmember Karina Talamantes, who worked at City Hall for a long time and is off to, again, a great start as the city council member for District 3. We have other electeds here as well. Nancy Bowie Thompson from the SMUD Board, Greg Fishman. And then I cannot tell you how much it means to me to have a county supervisor here, especially one doesn't represent this area. And I know the one who does is out of town, or otherwise he would be here. But it means a lot to have you here, Rich Desmond. It means a lot to have your partnership. Our city charter officers who, as you all know, we make the policy, but they actually run the city. And I don't say that with any hesitation at all. It's the system, and we debate it sometimes, but let me tell you something, couldn't ask for a better team here. And so we begin with the city manager, Howard Chan. Howard may be interspersed in this speech throughout as we continue here. We have the city attorney, Susanna Alcala Wood, who is here. The city treasurer, John Colville. Thank you, John, for all that you do. The city auditor, Jorge Oseguera, I saw right back there. Thank you so much, Jorge. The city clerk would be here, but for the fact that she's ill. Otherwise, she would have been here. I want to welcome, and you'll hear from them in a few moments on the panel, Chief Kathy Lester, our police chief, and Fire Chief Chris Costamagna. Number of our labor leaders and community leaders that are here, I really appreciate it. I want to give, again, a special shout out, if I may, because this partnership is so important. First of all, Lachelle Dozier, who's the director of our Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency, a major piece of this puzzle as we seek to build more housing. I also want to welcome some of the lead county staff that are here. We have Siobhan Katari, who is the assistant executive officer of the county, something like that. I say in charge of all things important. And Emily Halkin, who is the Homeless Services Director for the county and worked for the city for years. And I got my start here with Emily. I know I'm going to leave people out, and I'm going to feel, and Dante Early, city council member, city of West Sacramento, is right here, who's a dear friend, also runs the United Way. And if I didn't say it, Dennis Rogers, who's representing council member Rick Jennings, who could not be here today as well. Chinua Rhodes, the president of the school board here, and also the director of the mayor's office of civic engagement. He gets a mention. I said Greg Fishman and Nancy Bowie Thompson. And to all of you who are special guests here today. The one other thing I have to dispense with, in addition to thanking my great staff who really worked so hard to put all this together, and thank you, all of you, Mary Lynn and Andrew, you know, especially, but it's Ed Emerson's birthday today. Ed is the guy who actually puts together the stage and the whole thing. So Ed, happy birthday. And you owe me now 2 cases of beer because he said if I mentioned his name, it's a case of beer. So there we go. So I also have to thank one other person because he couldn't be here today because he is having his confirmation hearing to be a member of the Air Resources Board. And we are in his district today, and that is Vice Mayor Eric Guetta. Eric has been a great champion on this project and so many others that are important to our city. I want to make sure that he gets a round of applause. And I'm not forgetting Lisa Bates, who runs Sacramento Steps Forward, which is our continuum of care and really important to this whole thing. Okay. So, members of the public, as I said, this is my second state of the city, and I decided to do it differently this year, you know, and maybe people will say, please, can you go back to just one next year? I get it. But I actually think, and I thought and think, that breaking down some of the key priorities of the city into discrete subjects and then actually spending some real time addressing them is a different way to do it, but maybe a better way to do it. Because these issues, whether it's Monday nights, whether it's what I'm going to talk about Friday today, I think are too important to be 1 or 2 lines in a speech. And so I'm going to speak for 10, 15 minutes, and then we're going to have a panel, and we're going to have a real discussion about where we go together as a community. And I hope you know my style well enough. I try very hard to be collaborative, and I have the deepest respect for everybody here, but I'm also going to speak some of my truths and hopefully do it in the right way. And so working together to not solve, but help make better our community's most serious challenge is the subject of the state of the city, part 2. Not nearly as much fun as Monday night, when I laid out some ideas about how we can change together the city's permitting process to make it easier to have more live music, not just in the downtown, but throughout Sacramento. We listened to a great band, and we celebrated Sacramento's great potential to be what I call the West Coast music capital. Today, it's back to the hard stuff. And I appreciate, again, you taking all of the time as we talk about a topic that too often divides us, but really should always unite us in determination to work together, now more than ever. For it is the only way we can succeed. It doesn't matter whether you're an elected official at any level, at every level, at any level, whether you're a community leader, we all hear the same things. People want it to be better. They want more help for the people suffering, and they want cleaner and safer streets. And the two are not inconsistent. They can't be, and they must never be. So before I talk about what's missing from our homelessness, healthcare, and public safety responses in the city, I want to look back at some of what we have done together as a city. And by the way, the city has never been a homeless services agency. It's not what we do, but what we have done together over the last 6.5 years. Said it so many times now, I hope it's becoming part of the vernacular. The city has funded, opened, and operated every night now 1,100 beds. 1,100 beds. And that's in addition to the thousands of beds that the county of Sacramento open for our unsheltered residents on a temporary basis. It's not enough, but I think the public needs to know that we are actually housing thousands of people together every single night of the week, even temporarily. We created and we staff the new Department of Community Response, which we'll talk about again in a few minutes. We have passed a number of difficult ordinances, but necessary ordinances, my view, that we can use and have used to keep the sidewalks clear and to protect the areas around schools and critical facilities from the spillover effect of homeless encampments. We have addressed 4,500 sidewalk complaints alone and resolved most of them voluntarily, but with a little bit of a push. Since 2017, and this comes right from Lisa Bates and Sacramento Steps Forward, our joint city-county efforts have helped more than 17,000 people off the streets. And if that's all we reported today, and if that was the reality of our situation, we should hold a parade. But of course, we can't hold a parade because 3 people are becoming homeless for every person we get off the street. There's a lot to celebrate, but obviously we are still in the midst of a crisis. One of our biggest potential achievements is a legally binding partnership agreement with the County of Sacramento. And that for the first time has city outreach workers and county behavioral health workers doing outreach to try to begin the process of helping people find shelter and housing, but also to get desperately sick people off the street. It is a work in progress. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that again in a few moments. Now, this might be controversial in the county, but what we've learned is that we have to always be able to respectfully dialogue and sometimes disagree. So I want to say for myself that I am fully behind Governor Newsom's initiative to modernize the law that I wrote in 2004, the Mental Health Services Act. Now, here's what I want to say about the county when it comes to the Mental Health Services Act. I think they have spent the money very well. I do. This county and counties throughout California have spent the money very well. They've helped a lot of people. But here's the problem. The state of California has not set priorities. And they've said, the 58 counties, do it your way. Well, I support what Governor Newsom is calling for. And again, you would think, well, I wrote this. Why are you messing with my initiative? I support this because the state has a compelling interest to assure that more of this money, more of it, not just in Sacramento County, but throughout the state, is spent in and on these tent encampments that are so disgraceful for our humanity, for our public safety, for our public health. And not enough of the money, in my view, is going towards those encampments, and that needs to change. Since the siting of homeless facilities is such a challenge, we all know the great irony. Fix this, the people tell us, many people tell us, but please don't put it in my neighborhood. 3 weeks ago, I pushed a controversial measure, and it was controversial among my colleagues, delegating to the city manager the unilateral authority to choose safe camping sites. And he's being very deliberative and smart and collaborative, as he always is. And I know he will begin delivering those sites soon. We also strengthened, again, controversially, the enforcement of our sidewalk, personal storage, and critical infrastructure ordinances. The two go together. Despite all of these foundations and advances, there is still, in my view, a missing piece. What is that missing piece? Well, we actually answered that question, even if we didn't realize it at the time, last January during the devastating storms that hit Sacramento on New Year's Eve. The record rain and wind knocked down hundreds of trees and threatened to shut down the pumps that we depend upon to keep our city dry. Our entire city council, I believe, visited the Joint Incident Command Center in the South Area Corporation Yard and were awed by what we witnessed. People from all different departments sitting in the same room, sharing information in real time. The arborists dispatched crews to remove fallen trees. The utilities department cleared clogged drains and made sure the pumps were working. The police and fire departments supported all the work necessary to keep the neighborhoods safe and expedite the cleanup. And all the while, the city's finance team kept track of all the expenses so the city could obtain reimbursement from the federal government so that we can have the resources for the next natural disaster. It was all hands on deck, a true emergency response. It's the way that the city, the county, the state, and the country always respond to natural disasters. It's almost become reflexive. It's what we do. Fires, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes. Everybody gets together organizationally. Resources are deployed, and we don't ask how much did it cost until after we've made sure that people's lives are better. That's the way we do it. So 2 years ago, I proposed a Department of Community Response, and some of the leaders are here today. It's made up of incredibly dedicated men and women who respond to people living in encampments and vans and cars and work to help as many people as possible into shelter and into safe ground. It is one single department. And the truth is, they are wonderful and they are overwhelmed. At the same time, fire, police, and code enforcement departments are all receiving similar calls. The 311 system is overloaded, and calls come in so quickly that it takes now 4.3 days on average to respond. That's a huge improvement, actually, over 33 days a year ago, but still too long for people needing help and for neighbors demanding, when will this encampment be cleaned up? And when will you help the people who are living in the encampment? Our goal, not just our goal, our mission, our imperative must be real-time response. If a true joint emergency response is expected for a natural disaster, how can we do any less for this man-made disaster we call homelessness? I proposed the idea of a homeless emergency response center 2 years ago. The time for this approach is long overdue. On the same night that we approved giving City Manager Chan the authority to set up safe grounds to help people, we also directed him and the city team to seek strict compliance with city ordinances much more rapidly, using overtime, more money. Yeah, it's going to cost more money, more overtime if necessary. This new rapid response to both help people off the streets and make our streets cleaner and safer can only succeed if we commit to the same kind of coordinated emergency response that is standard for every other kind of emergency. As a result of the seed that I planted 2 years ago and the clear city council direction for more action and the leadership of the city manager and his department heads, This emergency response model for the city is already being built. And I want to give a shout out and a thank you to everyone who has been involved over the last 6 months under your leadership, Howard, working day and night to set up this coordinated emergency response. I believe it is going to pay big dividends for us. So what is this? The Department of Community Response is not being sidelined. They will still be at the center of our effort, but here is today's big news. This is the headline. The city's new emergency response to homelessness will be led and directed by our fire department. The city's new emergency response to homelessness will be led and directed by our fire department. Why? Fire is already most often the first responder to crises and health-related emergencies. They are used to, in fact, it's what they do. And Ryan Henry, thank you for being here as well. Appreciate your local 522. They are used to joining with other agencies in large-scale firefighting efforts that have included some of the biggest and deadliest disasters in state history. They have the skill, the expertise, and the community support to lead this effort. It will be housed at the big facility on Richards Boulevard. Fire will now coordinate the activities of DCR, work collaboratively with the police department, code enforcement, the city's Office of Emergency Management, animal care, and will include county behavioral health in the more frequent and intensive emergency outreach that this new organization calls for. We will also include park rangers and, of course, outside service providers like Hope Cooperative. And Erin Johansson is here, and she's going to be on our panel in just a few minutes. So you will get to know, I hope, Assistant Fire Chief Brian Pedro. He has been tapped to run it. Where are you, Brian? Right there. Give him a hand. All right, you're giving the rest of the speech. He's being tapped to run it, and he's currently working to perfect the structure. He is a registered nurse who has been emergency service director of the fire departments here and in Reno. He is also a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force Reserves. And again, Mr. City Manager, Fire Chief, Police Chief, I know whose leadership has been integral in this. You made the right choice. So, homelessness is not a one-time natural disaster. It's ongoing. So our joint emergency response will in some ways look different than the storm response, which I described last January. But the elements of our emergency response on homelessness must be the same as for every other disaster. Enhanced coordination, rapid deployment and response, the immediate timely sharing of information, and a daily accountability to the public to help more people and for the people of this city to begin to see a real difference. Currently, a group of city and county officials led by Assistant City Manager Mario Lara, who does a great job, and he will be on our panel as well, meet once a week in the space on Richards Boulevard. They identify the most severe encampments and prioritize where to send DCR and county behavioral health workers. This new emergency operations center will be much more structured and comprehensive. Once it is fully up and running, lead officials in each of these departments will gather as often as is necessary to identify the hottest spots and deploy more rapid response to the individual and community calls for relief. This new emergency response must bring better results. I am confident that it will, but I have to say that I have long since abandoned the idea that the city can dent this problem alone. This is not, by the way, just a Sacramento problem. It is a state and a national problem. We can debate the causes, and the truth of the matter is that your point of view and my point of view are actually both true, because there are multiple causes for this state and national problem. But at the core, in my opinion, what's really at the core is systemic poverty. People have always lived with serious mental health issues, and substance abuse is not new. But now, people who are able to barely hang on no longer can. Housing is not affordable, which will be the subject, Kathy Cresswell, of my speech, State of the City speech, part 3, on Friday. Society is much more fragile, and it's much more coarse. More people are isolated, and whatever family and safety nets they once had, they don't exist in the same way anymore. We have to do better. But man, we are doing about everything that we can. But solving or even making demonstrable progress on this problem is far beyond the scope and capability of a single municipal government. If all partners in the system work together, not just on paper or in theory, but in reality, every day in every way, we will get much farther and much faster. Yes, thank you. It says here, applause line. That's why our partnership here with the county is so important, and why I'm so grateful that you are here today. Because in the end, no amount of coordination or encampment outreach or even necessary enforcement will change our reality until we provide many more pathways into safe camping, into shelter, into tiny homes, into permanent housing, and even more importantly, for the thousands who need it, mental health and drug treatment. This is our current reality in the city. In addition to our 1,100 nightly beds every night, the city currently holds a handful of spots in our Miller Park Safe Campground for immediate placement for people living outdoors who agree to come into a safer, more organized space away from businesses, homes, and public spaces. It's not perfect, but it's good. It's better than encampments spread out all over the city. We need way more, and we need more St. John's, and we need more Hope Cooperatives, and we need more of everything, but we need more safe ground. That's why the decision to task the city manager with creating new safe camping sites is so important. Most of our assets are in the so-called coordinated access system with the county, and that is a system that is beginning to work. We should applaud it, build it up. We are already funding it. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you again to the county. But currently, it still takes days to get a bed through coordinated access. We cannot credibly offer people somewhere to go immediately with more emergency spots of all kinds. And with the manager choosing the sites, free of politics, or at least relatively free, and a real-time and a relatively free, and a real-time emerging response to moving people from where they shouldn't be to where they can actually get help, we will get there. Now, I voted for the strict compliance enforcement of all of our ordinances. Why? Because the public has a right to use its sidewalks without obstruction or without fear. And by the way, the politics changing a lot in the sense that we all recognize, even me who came into this all about capacity, all about beds, all about services, that we have to have both. We need to compassionately and humanely enforce the law, because too many people, including, by the way, people with disabilities, cannot use the sidewalks when they're instructed. So that's no longer quite the issue. But we will be selling the public a bill of goods if that's the end of the response. Enforce, but enforce to where? Take people to safe ground or a shelter, but then what? Get people housed, but what happens if they're too ill to stay housed? In the end, no matter how many people we move or we shelter or we house, if there's no path to get thousands help for their underlying mental health or substance abuse conditions, the public will be rightly disappointed. There has been a lot of heat lately and a lot of conversation about crime and those who are responsible for enforcing and prosecuting crime. And I'm only indirectly going to respond to that. I will say this. Our county criminal justice system must also be a full partner. The major study of California's homeless population recently completed by UC San Francisco found that 19% of the thousands of people surveyed entered homelessness directly from jail or prison. Directly from jail or prison. And by the way, we have a pretty big jail in the heart of our downtown. I think that 19% is a big time undercount. The vast majority surveyed said they received no support to prepare for a successful release, no help finding housing, no treatment to prevent them from using drugs again, not even a ride back to the place they once called home. I'm going to take some heat from maybe the left, and I don't care, because I will support any path that results in people getting the help they need. Voluntary services first, but involuntary services if necessary, including court diversion. But the services, the full service partnerships, the wraparounds, the voluntary or involuntary, must be increased dramatically. And we've talked about this. 28th and C was in some respects a success. We worked together. We got people into Miller Park. Lots to learn and improve upon, but one of the things I want to see, and I've said it and I say it lovingly, not critically, I want to see with these future engagements between the city and county, I want to see a dramatic increase in the numbers of people enrolled in FSPs. There were 800 plus syringes found on the site. Those people are sick and they need help. And our response needs to be comprehensive, including this crucial component. We all have a long way to go to improve the results, and even in our partnership agreement to help the thousands. But I also don't want to minimize the progress we've made together. It's a huge breakthrough that the city and county are actually working shoulder to shoulder in this fight. And I'm grateful for it. In early September, the county will open its new core mental health center at 14th and X Streets downtown. It will be, yes, it will be a key drop-in and referral point to bring people into treatment. Now, the city, as we were negotiating back and forth, asked for this. We asked for a downtown mental health center in the partnership agreement, and it's the county that's making it happen. Thank you. And it will be run by Hope Cooperative, who you'll hear from in a minute. Give Aaron a big hand. By the way, to all the providers out here, you're the real heroes, heroines of this thing. We try to do the right thing and set you up so that you can do what you do. You know who you are, and we know who you are, and we're grateful. Finally, I have to talk about why we're here today. There are many hopeful signs, including right here on the property where we stand. WellSpace, as Jonathan said, bought it for a comprehensive care campus. The very kind of thing, by the way, that critics and people have been calling for, a campus. We've tried, by the way. Talk about Cal Expo in another speech. It will have a state-of-the-art 988 call center, an expanded version of what we call the crib, the sobering center near downtown that the city and the county helped stand up. 200 additional substance abuse beds, step-down beds to get people prepared to re-enter the society successfully once they are done with treatment. Affordable housing for seniors. Oh my God, is there anything? Well, I don't know what's more tragic. A child that's homeless or a senior that's homeless? It's a tie. It's all horrible. A dental clinic to fix teeth ravaged by drug abuse so that people who are in recovery can reclaim their lives and go back out and try to get a job and reconnect. Jonathan's working as fast as possible, and the city and county together are helping to fund this. So let's get it up and running as quickly as possible so we can help people. You can help people sooner rather than later. And let's also, this is my plea to both the city and county officials, let's go after grant or philanthropic funding or city and county funding. And if it's public funding, we know there needs to be a process. So maybe it's grant funding, but we can all figure it out together. And let's add WellSpace to our team. Come on, they deserve that. They are experts at responding to the hardest calls, and they can transport people in crisis directly to the downtown crib or this facility when it's up and running, and enroll people immediately in substance abuse and mental health treatment and connect them to all the health care and other things that they need. That's it for me. I will never stop believing that this can be better. I know that I am accountable. And I also know that I came into this office 6.5 years ago, creating really high expectations. I sometimes wish that I had done it a little bit differently, and I had put forward more modest expectations. But you know what? On the other hand, no pain, no gain. Because if I hadn't set that bar and hadn't pushed, I don't know that we would be together with all of you, because no one does it alone. I don't know that we would be as far as we are with the foundation that we have now laid together to do something even greater on behalf of our neighborhoods, on behalf of our entire community, and on behalf of, let's never forget the humanity of people who once had lives, who were once kids and babies, who find themselves in the worst imaginable circumstances. We can help them and have a cleaner and safer city, and that's what we're going to do together. Thank you very much, everybody. Now, we are not done. Now I'm going to become a moderator, and we get to hear from our panel of experts who live and breathe this topic every day. And I could have invited most any of you to come on up here. We tried to do the best we could. And the topic is manyfold, and they could talk about anything. But the real question is what do you think of a new emergency operations response? What are its opportunities and what are its challenges? Please welcome Fire Chief Chris Costamagna, Police Chief Kathy Lester, Jonathan Porteous from WellSpace, Aaron Johansson from Hope Cooperative, and Mario Lara, who is the Assistant City Manager, but today is going to represent, so to speak, the Department of Community Response. Welcome to all of you. Give them a big hand, everybody. Thank you all for your dedication to our city and our community, for your skill, and also for your heart. And I want to begin with Chief Costamagna down there, because since we highlighted fire taking the lead And again, I don't want to forget Chief Lester here, who's been a really key leader in reading every room and in helping to put this thing together. So don't think you are forgotten. We're going to get to you in a minute. But Chief Costamagna, why is it appropriate for the fire department to lead this effort? And what do you see?
I see, well, first of all, I'm going to thank the Chief Minister for her vision. She came to me months ago talking about the ICS system. And the fire department-
No acronyms here unless you define them.
Incident command system. So we talked and we said, yes, this is appropriate. We can do this. And why the fire department? Well, first of all, you met Brian Pedro. Brian Pedro's background speaks to itself alone. But we do operate in crisis every day, and we operate in that incident command system every day, from big to small, simple to complex. This is a complex incident. And we continue talking about what are we delivering? We're delivering an alternative to public safety, an alternative response, and getting people off ramps that they don't typically have. And that's done with not just the fire department. It's done with every city department. It's done with, when you go to an encampment, it's not just the fire department or just the police department that's going to go there and help an encampment. So we said we can do this. We can provide things outside of the traditional 911 services, because when we go into the 911 side of the house, people are going to a hospital. That's the only place we can take them. And we need those alternatives. And so do the folks in encampments. And it's not just in encampments, it's people shut in their home. Some people may have heard of the silver tsunami. It's the baby boomers. It's the next generation that we will take care of. So it's a response to many things that we deal with every day, and a new way to do it. I think the most important thing is the coordination that the fire department can bring to it. Brian brings that every day. We've been in a few Tuesday meetings. He's getting up and running, and he's in his information gathering time right now, and he's getting his hands around all the tools he has in the city. And the other thing about the fire department is we provide service in the county too. Not a lot of people realize that, but we have 2 county contracts. And the fire department, the Sacramento Fire Department, can reach out farther than the city of Sacramento. We have medic units, there's 52 medic units in the county system. If we need that, it's there for us. It runs through our dispatch. So a lot of times we're a backstop for that crisis. When it comes to us, we're the ones that go out and make a decision, or help people make a decision on how their day is going to go, the rest of the day is going to go. And Mr. Ray, you alluded to a lot of things in your first speech, but it's that in care, getting a person to the place they need to go. You can't take care of a psychiatric patient at the ER. That's not the best place for them. And I know Jonathan can talk about that more.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll come right back to you. That's okay. I want to turn it to Chief Lester for a moment. We can all speak honestly among friends here, right? That the role of the police department in these situations is a subject of controversy. I know I have my opinion. I want you involved in the right way to make sure that the public safety is always protected. And yet we formed DCR in part because the police want to get out of some of these calls. We all agree, and I'm going to get to the question, that when any kind of serious criminal behavior is occurring in an encampment or anywhere in the city, that law enforcement needs to come down hard on that felony, call it felony behavior. So what can you tell us about enforcement, especially when it comes to felonies in these tent encampments?
Sure, absolutely agree with you. And I think the real goal should be to try and prevent that from happening in the first place. But the reality is that we don't always see that. We see a lot of victimization throughout our community, through our unhoused population as well as our housed population. I'm going to share some startling numbers. In the last year, we made over about 20,000 arrests. And I know the department, we have been kind of put in a position where people don't really know what we're doing. So I want to share this because I think it's going to surprise people. Of those over 20,000 arrests, just over half of those were for felonies. And about a third of those felony arrests were people that identified as unhoused. And that's significant. When you look at last year's 2022 point in time count, it says that there's 4,444 unhoused living in the city of Sacramento, about 594 additional on the Parkway. That really equates to less than 1% of our city's population, and we're seeing huge disparities. It's not any different for misdemeanor arrests, which are more of our low-level quality of life crimes. Again, we're arresting about 1/3 of that group has been people that have identified as unhoused. So as your public safety leaders here between fire and police, we don't ignore that. We know that there's a huge problem with crime and people not only committing crimes, but being victimized. And we have to look for alternative ways to, address those issues. When we talked last year about bringing gun violence down in our city and looking at violent crime in different ways, you remember there is an enforcement component, but there's also a very strong partnership with a lot of our organizations. Like the mayor said, you can't do this alone. None of us can. Public safety really is a shared responsibility. And what I do know about Sacramento, I think, you said we're amongst friends. If you look around this room, tell me that you can't reach out and point at somebody that you know. We all know each other here. It's one of our biggest strengths in Sacramento. We're, big enough to be an urban core, but we're small enough that everyone kind of knows everybody. We know how to pick up the phone. We know how to talk to each other. And so that is a huge opportunity that other cities, quite frankly, don't have that we can address. And, I also think that we have just amazing partners. The police department, the fire department, alternative response, we all have our roles and responsibilities. We do what we do very, very well. But when you look at these complex problems, you have to look at all of your resources. And I can tell you from a very wise guy, he once told me, he said, when you look at, problems within your community, don't look at where your weaknesses are, look at where your strengths are and where your resources are. And we have a huge amount of really positive resources. And what I love about this partnership is it gives us the opportunity to bring our resources, they are limited, together to address a problem that affects us all.
Thank you. Let me turn it over to both Jonathan and Aaron to talk about how we use this new emergency operations approach to get more people the help that they need, and how you envision it, what you want to see 6 months from now. The old question, right? You look back and we have this up and running. What will you want to have seen aside from more people getting help? But structurally, organizationally, what do we have to do?
Well, as a clinician and CEO, I need continuity. I need someone to be brought to me and not brought to a hospital. Most people in crisis are taken to the wrong place. I don't want to disparage law enforcement or peace officers. I used to do the training for the peace officer, stand in the training command academy for drug and alcohol and mental health treatment. And peace officers are not mental health clinicians. And Chief Arden was the first person to come and say, yeah, this crisis receiving site sounds really good. How do we get people to it? But we need that continuity. We need to see action to us. We need to see rigs coming in, dropping people off. We need to know that law enforcement trusts us as a drop-off. It's really disempowering to spend 5 hours in a hospital on your shift and then watch someone walk out 10 minutes later. We don't want you to have to wait. We want you to just drop people off. And we've seen that over and over again with the crib, where you do that. But it needs to flow. Otherwise, we're all just handcuffed more than the people we serve. Otherwise, we're strapped to a gun more than the people.
So what kind of increased continuity do you want to see, improved continuity you want to see that will make sure that the people who need the help get to you regularly?
met and brought in. I'd like to give people an opportunity to move into recovery and find the front porch to recovery, which is typically a crisis receiving site. It's a best practice.
That's the crib.
Well, the crib or any crisis receiving site, but that is the best practice. And that's the front porch to where
Aaron, you're representing all the providers here.
That's a big job.
Okay.
Well, I think that what I'm most excited about hearing this today is that I think swings. We don't want any law enforcement, get them out of our face. Let's just do this all as a service provider response to let's just arrest everyone. And I think it's such a nuanced population out there that we are serving that we need everyone. There are a lot of folks on the street, as you talked about earlier, Mayor, that have been released from jails with zero services. And some of those folks return to the only thing they know, which is crime. When we have that situation, we need our law enforcement partners. We absolutely need them to support the outreach workers who that is not their skill. And then we need the outreach workers to be able to do progressive engagement with those folks who need the services, who may not know that they can trust the services, and it might take a lot longer for us to do our work. But with having that law enforcement at the table as partners with us, as opposed to adversaries, that's when we're going to get that. We're going to make a real difference here. So that's what I see. Our teams are out there with the Department of Community Response as homeless outreach staff. And then we're also operating the Outreach and Engagement Center, which is another place where people can actually go. So as well as the crisis receiving, we need places where people can go and where they can get help in real time, where we can connect them with the next right service. We talk to our staff about being part of a relay race. We might be the very front of that relay race. We might make the first contact, but we're not the end of the story by any means. We're a short-term intervention that then connects people to the more long-term intervention. My organization in the core centers, we're a more long-term intervention. As an FSP, long-term intervention. So having all of these services connected with the final, most important stop of permanent housing, and I really appreciate what you said about poverty. That's really what got us here in the first place. And so more affordable housing so that we have a final stop where people can actually be successful in permanent affordable housing with services so it's sustainable. That's when we're really going to see the real results. And what does that take? Every single person in this room has to be part of that solution.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to come back to everybody, but let me turn it over to our Assistant City Manager, Mario Lara. Talk about the Department of Community Response. Again, as I said, such dedicated men and women who are out there, non-peace officers. They're out there sort of the first responders. How do they fit into this overall structure?
Sure, Mayor. The Department of Community Response, DCR, is a small but mighty team, and it was originally conceived, I think you alluded to it, as an alternative 911 response agency. Started out as a division out of the city manager's office and got established as a department very recently, actually, and they're still kind of in their formation stages, right? But they have been and will continue to be a key partner in terms of addressing the homelessness crisis. And as part of this structure, will be part of something that is organized in a way more structured way, and they will continue to be on a daily basis working with all of the other departments to be able to effectively respond to the crisis that we're facing. There are three main activities, right, that is part of the homeless response actions. You have the outreach, you have camp management and cleanups, and then you have the compliance piece. The DCR team are dedicated who are working on the outreach and the camp management side of the equation, and they will continue to leverage the resources that the other departments bring to bear as part of this incident management team structure to continue to do that. They triage, they receive all of the calls for services that come in through the 311 systems, and they will continue to triage that with the participating partners, make sure that they are being assigned in an appropriate way. You talked about having a two-pronged strategy, a rapid response and a coordinated strategy. DCR team is at the forefront of like I say, going through those 301 calls, determining the encampments and, assessing them to determine whether they're small, medium, more complex encampments and where they need to go and what resources need to come in order to be able to respond to those.
Thank you. So I'm gonna ask a tough one now, that might expose differences among the panel, but maybe not, because we have to deal with the things that people say, right? And here's what people say, that most people will not come in for services. They just plain will not come in. Others say, if we apply what's known as the assertive community outreach approach and spend whatever time it takes, repeated efforts to bring people in, that even people who are reluctant at first will in fact accept treatment. And so I'd like to know your opinion, because this is one of those ideological things that we need to deconstruct and apply this logically. I personally am for involuntary treatment, as I said, at the end of the continuum as a last resort, but it begs the question, are we doing enough encampment engagement outreach to work with somebody who may be reluctant at first to get them into treatment, as opposed to, if they won't go to safe ground or whatever, move them to another part of town? So take that one on. So here, I'll put it a different way. What percentage of people who are mentally ill or dealing with substance abuse do you think will come in voluntarily with the right kind of intensive approach? Just like to hear what you have to say. Everybody. Okay?
I'm not opposed to assisted outpatient treatment, for example, Laura's Law.
Which is involuntary.
Which is involuntary. It's kind of pathetic that that's what we have, frankly. I mean, when you think of this malaise of disempowerment we have, it's families who have to somehow almost incarcerate their kids into treatment. Where are we? Where are we? We have millions of dollars to help people with treatment. So I'm good with AOT or that idea if we've gone through these other steps. And I'm not asking to not address addiction, to not address mental health. But the fact that we've reached a point where care court and assisted outpatient treatment are becoming these major vehicles means that we've failed at all the other levels before that. And that's where, and in answering your question, it's a good question. How many people will come in voluntary? Yeah. Why don't we try? I don't think we've been trying. Again,
well,
I think.
What do you think the result will be?
I think the result will be what we've seen with the crib again, 7,000 visits, 2,000 people, 7,000 visits. Everyone coming would have been in an ambulance going to a hospital or in a cruiser going to the hospital or the jail. 4% of those people coming to us went to the hospital. The rest didn't. Multiple people getting into a detox facility, for example. The county reconfigured access to detox and people went straight from the crisis receiving site to detox. At one point, something along the lines of 15% of the people coming in who are intoxicated on methamphetamine. So we should probably try.
Okay. Aaron, and I'll turn it to the two chiefs. Go ahead.
I mean, the evidence in places where they've done AOT already is clear. It's a very small percentage of people that actually need that service. If we do progressive engagement right, and we do it repeatedly, and we have the right kind of outreach, most people will come in voluntarily. It is a huge percentage that will voluntarily go. We have to have—
Even if it takes a lot of time?
It takes a lot of time, and you have to have a place. There has to be a somewhere. So if there's not somewhere for them to go, like right now, most of the people we encounter on the street would go to a shelter today. And this is not people in mental health crisis, but anyone who's homeless would go to a shelter today if we had a shelter bed. They would go. What happens is over time, they get disappointed, they get disenchanted, they get distrustful, and their life is falling apart at every turn. So we come there and we say, hey, would you like a shelter bed? And we could get you in 27 days, or residential drug and alcohol treatment. That'll be 45 days, and you can get on a list and call us every day. Those kinds of approaches to just really make people distrust the system. So I think many people will come in voluntarily. I don't think it's true that people don't want help.
Let's hear Mario and our two chiefs on this question.
I would add to that, this is where coordination is really important, right? Warm handoffs from the navigators who are out there with our county partners who are actually the service providers, opening up those doors and making it easier for folks to access the programs and services. I just wanted to add that tidbit. And I think in the last year, especially after our partnership agreement, we have improved. There's still a lot of room for improvement, but we have our navigators who are the staff, right? There are lots of different agencies and our external partners as well. And that's where the coordination becomes key, just making sure that we're able to get people to the right services that they need in an efficient way.
Chiefs?
Everybody has a story, and that's why I think this is a difficult problem in a lot of ways to try and address, because if the same treatment worked for everybody, we could figure out what that plan was and we could implement it. Talking to the men and women in law enforcement and the members of the Sacramento Police Department, as well as the fire department, our Department of Community Response, what we see a lot and what we get called to are people in crisis, people that are very, very ill from mental health issues, and lots of times have co-occurring substance abuse issues. And I don't think that's a surprise to anyone in here. It's a very difficult population to help. And so I think, number one, this team and our region, thank you to our county partners, because what an opportunity for us, right, to partner in a way we haven't done before and bring services in. But every individual needs to be treated in, an individual way. And we have to be flexible to recognize what people need and to try and find those resources. One of my biggest frustrations in this line of work, and I can tell you, biggest frustrations for our law enforcement professionals, is that when we don't get to people early, we have people that have a crisis, and that's preventable and it's predictable. And when it is predictable, it is preventable. And so I think there's a lot of work that we have to do on the front end to keep people from entering into crisis. But I can tell you, when people really have a lot of issues with mental health and with substance abuse, I think enforcement can definitely be a tool and should be a tool, with options, with diversion. Certainly we don't want to hold people accountable, but in the end, what we want are healthy people. We want a healthy community, and we want people off the streets. We want our community to be safe, and we want people to have access to the right services. But we have to be very individualized in how we approach that and what services we provide to make sure that they fit the problem the right way.
I'll go back to the fire department. A lot of times we are that backstop, and it's about us being flexible and compassionate with the person when they're experiencing a crisis. And crisis is at all levels. It could be an unfilled prescription is a crisis for someone, or it could be a full-blown psychiatric emergency, at which point it's implied we're going to take care of that person appropriately. And that's the street medicine that paramedic units provide every day. I think though, being able to bring those, again, I talk about off-ramps, bringing telemedicine that doesn't cost anything for me to have a patient get on an iPad with a doctor and get a prescription filled and then picked up across the street, that ends that crisis. The other levels of crisis, that's what we're working on. That's what we're talking about working on. That's what we're talking about, the alternatives to our traditional 911 response system.
All right, last question. Want to get everybody out here by 3 o'clock. I think there's more food and people talk to one another and share your thoughts. There's a fine line, as I know, everyone in politics knows, between over-promising and too low of expectations. It's a fine line. Talked about it a little bit earlier. So what should the public expect out of all that we have talked about today? The new emergency response, the enhanced collaboration between the city and the county, where we still have work to do together to continue to build on that foundation, the appropriate involvement of law enforcement, the leadership of the fire department, the us continuing to support the providers. What should the public expect? I know what they want to have happen, but really that fine line between over-promising and and not setting goals and standards that make a difference. Do you believe that this new structure, together with all of the initiatives that we're working on together, can actually help more people and bring a cleaner and safer Sacramento? Go.
I'll go first. I am optimistic, Mayor, that I think the public can expect to see a visible difference. And it won't be immediate, but it will over a period of time. I have to say, right, it's a complex environment that we're operating in. We're currently under an injunction here in the city of Sacramento, which limits and ties our hands a bit, right? But despite that, right, exactly. Despite that, right, this level of coordination, I think, will allow us to be more efficient in terms of putting a dent into the crisis in a real and visible way. And that's the hope, that's the optimism, that's the expectation that a year from now we'll be in a much different place, and it will be visible when you come to the downtown areas, when you come to the communities. District 4 and District 2 are the most impacted by this issue, and I believe that you will see a visible difference, that you will see a tangible difference within a period of time.
I will take that. I'll take it and run with it. Right before I leave office. Very good. Okay. Aaron, go ahead.
I think for me that, I've spent about 10 years in this work, and I was getting pretty depressed and discouraged myself until the city and county partnership agreement. That gave me a lot of hope and optimism. I think that was a big turning point. Having law enforcement and fire at this table is another giant step forward in the collaboration and coordination. I think we still could include some of our other law enforcement partners, like the district attorney's office and the sheriff, to make sure that we're all on the same page, because it takes all of us. And I think that's where I think we need to keep moving towards, because really when we're at cross purposes, we don't make headway. And we've seen the difference that the city county partnership agreement has made towards that end.
I have huge amount of optimism towards a model like this. We know that this collaborative approach works to address a lot of our very, very difficult problems. And I can tell you, when we come together as a group, especially when there's not a lot of us, we have a very big problem. We are more effective. And I know as part of this model, we'll be doing a lot of measuring. We'll be taking metrics and trying to figure out what's working and then make adjustments, because that's what you always do with these very dynamic models. And it gives us an opportunity to really have, one, a better understanding of what's going on in our community, but two, deliver the right services in an appropriate manner for better outcomes. And there's no, I don't think there's going to be any other outcome than that. And it really is a team effort and a team approach.
Fire Chief Beck, maybe we end it with you. The fire department, of course, has become much more than just a firefighting agency. You are the community paramedics. I mean, the first responders to all health-related emergencies in the community. And so what, again, does it mean for this decision, the council, the manager's decision, our collective decision, to put your department in front to lead this effort?
It's an honor. First of all, I'll say that. But I'm honored to do it with the police department, the DCR, and all the other city partners that we have within the city departments. I think you see the beginning here today of a true public-private partnership. And without DCR, I have to give them a lot of props. Today, there's not a lot of things that we can do differently, but in the future, there will be things that we can do differently. And that's that future you're talking about, Mayor, where not everybody goes to the ER, not everybody, and we do get them to the right facility the first time. That reduces the crisis alone. So we're excited about it. I think in a year when we look back, we talked about statistics. You're going to see a big change, and it starts here with WellSpace in the partnership.
Thank you. And don't forget, self-governing safe ground being expanded in Sacramento. Mark Barron, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that ends the second State of the City. We only have 6 more to go. And I want to thank you all really for coming. Great.